So I'm super excited to speak to you guys today in a way that I've never spoken before. So, um, on my sunrise walk this morning, which I actually started well before the sun came up, um, I was doing what I've been doing a lot lately, and that's objectively looking into the past and finding the patterns. And I'm getting to be really quick at this. And one of the things that I was thinking about this morning is my own personal evolution. Um, and the evolution specifically of my personality and the way that I finally unlocked the true key to my own authenticity. And it started in my actually, right after I graduated from high school. 3 weeks after I graduated from high school, I hopped on a train with a duffel bag and headed west to, with absolutely no knowing of what would happen the next day. Along the way, I saw a tornado in the Midwest, and it was alongside the train, not far off. And there were a couple Boy Scouts on the train, and they were like, "Oh my gosh," making like scared comments. And I was sitting there thinking, "We're not in Kansas anymore, Dorothy." And my journey to becoming the person that I am today began because even though I had been already basically taking care of myself since I was 14 years old, because of the circumstances of my teen years, by that time, like, I was fully engaged in my rebellious stage. And I don't mean rebellious in the way of breaking the rules so much as breaking the mold. And I had a lot of very dear friends along the way that helped to guide. And some of them have guided me even years beyond the last time we spoke. And what happened in the following 10 years, from the outside looking in, looks chaotic. But from the inside looking out, looks like evolution. Not just a little bit of evolution, but the full, from chaos to structure to order to descent, and then crawling one's way back from the edge of abyss to dive in one last time and find all the survivors and bring them home. And this journey culminated in 2023 when I completely started to restructure the way that I healed. For years, I was in therapy asking the same exact question and hearing the exact same response over and over again. It seems as though you are extremely self-aware. That's a very good thing. And my response would always be, yes, I know. Now please tell me, how do I stop the train wreck? And every single time I got the same answer, I don't know. And it felt more like I was educating my own therapist than healing my own self. And it wasn't until I turned inward in the end of my drug addictions counseling career that I realized what I was doing. That was the end of July of 2023. And I've been on an inward journey since then. There were a lot of points that were difficult. And in some ways, I was stopped by fear. And fear was something that had gripped me for a very long time. And I was afraid of even the most simple things that didn't make sense. Like I could never have my foot hanging off the edge of the bed. I understand why. I know that trigger. But it was still a fear that gripped me so hard that I refused to ever go underneath the covers. It wasn't until I got brave enough to truly allow myself to be completely immersed in the chaos and hold my own peace that I was finally able to see. This morning, on my walk, which was about an hour, I was thinking about some of the biggest shifts in my personality. And it typically had a lot to do with the way that I dressed and the music that I listened to. The people I hung around typically were very eclectic. It was a lot of people that were outcasted, considered to be different or misunderstood. And this was when I was most chaotic in my youth, and that would be from 18 to 23 before I joined the military. I was very transient. I was at one point homeless, and I bounced around for those 5 years. And I did a lot of different types of work, and I tried to find challenges, but I couldn't find anything that challenged me enough, and so I would work a job for a little while and be like, this is boring AF, and just quit. And I was around a lot of chaotic people, and I can see drastic shifts in my evolution, if you will. And one in particular was right after a domestic violence situation that I was living in. And I met a gentleman that, like, legit, like, saved me. Because, like, there was literally nothing I could do. I tried to run away and it didn't work. I had no help from anybody, and literally this guy came in and was just like, hey, get the fuck out. And then he moved in, and that was my second fiance. And it was a huge shift for me, because I went from being very, I'll be honest, like, my skin was literally gray. I had, like, dark circles underneath of both of my eyes. Like, I looked extremely unhealthy. And it was because I was in a very, very toxic situation, and I was surrounded by a lot of toxic people. And my life was literally being drained out of me because I was unable to escape. At least I thought. And now I understand. And it had to happen the way it happened, right? And so there was a very large shift, but in that particular period of my life, I was very much so in like a bull stage. And if you if you look at the prosynthetic alphabet, the very first symbol looks like a bull. And I feel like this was the beginning of my evolution as an adult, because my adult years began with trauma. And I was already studying psychology from like the age of 16 because it was a deep interest for me. And so at that point, like I could see like these things were starting to cause problems in my life. And it just, I couldn't figure out the way to fix these problems. So I was a bull in a china shop, and I rampaged a lot. And I don't want to say like rampage like in like a bad way, but I was very angry, and I was unable to stop that anger. And it led to quite a few years of self-damaging behaviors. And I had to face a lot of demons at a very young age. And the way that I dealt with it then was to stuff it in the back of my mind. And I had a visual of this, and they teach you to do visualization a lot in therapy, and I think visualization is wonderful, especially for this particular type of thing, compartmentalization. So that's exactly what I was doing, and I wasn't aware that I was compartmentalizing it, but I was. And this visualization I had was a very dark, scary looking like cave entrance that was like covered in cobwebs, because I was like terrified of spiders, and anytime I had a cobweb on me, like I'd freak out, like because there might be a spider on me. So like fear, everything that I feared was in this space. And if you'd like, you could call it Pandora's box, because that's pretty much what it was. Anything that had ever scared me ever in my life was in this box, and anything, or this cave, anything that resembled or reminded me of anything in that cave would immediately go into that cave, okay? But when I was in this raging period, I would have the only way I can describe it is like a Peter Griffin cutaway scene. Whenever like I would have an interaction that upset me, later on I would go home and I would process that interaction. And I never realized that that's what I was doing, but that's exactly what I was doing. I would go home and I would sit with the interaction, and I would think of all the different ways that I could have responded in a way that would have made that person feel whatever I wanted them to feel. My friend Lydia just messaged me. I will have to message her in a minute. Actually, I'll go ahead and message her and tell her what I did. Anyway, so the people that I interacted with at that period of my life, they were the type of people that I needed to interact with, because it was showing me exactly where the roots began, if you will, because later on, these friends that I had at that period of time in my life kind of stayed in a more leftist kind of like viewpoint, and I lost a lot of them during the whole political upsets that have happened in the last 10 years, and a few of them I tried to reach out to, and they were I was like, yeah, I'm not even gonna try. because it's like trying to speak to a brick wall, or a brick wall. That's something that I refused to allow to happen to myself. And I made sure that I always kept an open mind when I was speaking to people, so that I could understand from their perspective why they felt the way they felt. Because you cannot like make an argument with someone based solely in logic if they're not in a logical state of mind, right? So if someone's in for example, somebody who is in distress mentally because their mental health is failing, or because something's been triggered in them and they're catatonic, whatever it may be, if I can sit with that person in that state and be able to help them because I understand that state, then now I have an upper hand, right? So the reason why I have had the life that I've had is for me to be able to understand this side of the fence, that side of the fence, and how to stand on that fence and see both sides. And that's exactly why I've had such drastic shifts in my life and my personality. Like even in my taste in music, like I would go from listening to, I'll just bring it to my senior year. You know, I was listening to the System of a Down and Disturbed like my whole senior year. And then, you know, not even like 2 years later, I'm heavy into country and I don't listen to rock for like 5 years. And then suddenly like a switch flips and I'm listening to heavy metal, and I've never listened to heavy metal before. And so it's these connections that I've had, and these are all based on the people that I was around at that time in my life. And the heavy metal switch came on when I met my children's father, and we found common ground in our way, and that opened the door to something that I'd never done before, which was actually gaming. Like I had never gamed before. Like I had always been like terrible with my hands, and so like I'd never even gamed once. But he introduced me to like my absolute favorite game, and that opened up a whole new world for me, because then I ended up like spending 7 years of my life doing something I'd never done before, and that was sitting on a couch. And I understood for the first time in my life why I didn't like that. And at the same time, I appreciated it because we shared a love of games, we shared a love of music, and we shared a love of particular genres of TV. Not all, like I will say that it was not all, and that's why it worked out so well, because we were able to connect in a different way, and then both of us expanded our perspective, right? And that's exactly why we bring people into our lives that we may have some things in common with, but other things that we can expand and explore together, right? And this is how we evolve as humans. This is how we understand life in a completely different perspective. We have our core things that we absolutely love, and we don't change those things, but we allow ourselves to broaden our understanding by allowing new concepts, new ideas, strangers, people that we may never have had something in common with before, but now we have just even one tie, one thing that has us that we can just start talking, right? And then suddenly, like, that one thing turns into, oh my gosh, that's really cool. I have never thought about it that way. Thanks for your understanding. I love this. And now we have a new understanding between the two of us. I don't have to believe what you believe, but I can see where you come from and why you believe what you believe. And then that creates a connection. And that's what we want. We want a deep, genuine connection not a surface level connection. I want to know what makes you tick. And I don't mean just like, what makes you move. I want to know what makes you go, ugh, right? Because if I know what makes you go, ugh, I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, that makes me go, ugh, too. I don't like that. Let's not do that. Okay, cool. Right? So understanding that, yes, from the outside looking in, I have had an extremely chaotic looking life. But from the inside looking out, I have had an amazingly beautiful life that has allowed me to be a chameleon. Some of my best friends I haven't spoken to in years. But I know that if I were to call up my best friend and be like, hey dude, haven't spoken to you in a while, let's talk. Immediately, absolutely, I got time this time. Hit me up. And I'm the exact same way for any one of my friends. Doesn't matter whether we spoke yesterday or we spoke 15 years ago. Because every single person who's ever come into my life has made a huge impact on me, regardless of how long they were in my life. And that's why I am unforgettable. Because I remember every single one of them, even if it is in a stranger. I can find them. And that's why I know no strangers. And every single person I come in contact with has all of my love. Because somewhere along the way, I met someone who changed my life, and that person reminds me of them. That is how we create connection. You cannot find peace until you know chaos. And that very first spark that lit up everything is exactly what keeps us going every single day. And I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day. This has been a fairly long video, but I hope it explains a lot. So don't worry if you've had a chaotic life. I'm 40 years old and I had to start over with absolutely nothing. And it was the greatest adventure of my life. And I'm glad of where I landed. Bye, guys.